This is not about kind of just getting things for the sake of it. You still do need to think about who is our audience, and does that media channel or does that blog or wherever it is you're pitching the story, does that still make sense for the audience that I'm trying to reach? And is the message that I'm trying to communicate still the same? How does that really look? If we want to reflect Christ, if we want to be aligned with our values, how do we do that in a way that is meaningful? What I meant was we had to adapt. And I think we do have to become more agile, but there are far greater opportunities now for us to reach people that we've never been able to reach. AI accelerates that massively, but there are risks. And so I think there will be some people who are fearful of what they don't know, but what I would really encourage people is to learn and to see where are people, because that's where the people you're trying to communicate to are. Christian organizations should be the most transparent organizations on the planet. You know, I think we should be really not trying to position ourselves or posture ourselves in a way that is lacking integrity. We should be leading the way in this, and if we're not, there's a problem.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Missional AI podcast. I'm your host, James Poulter, and we are recording here at our wonderful partners Premier here in central London in the eve of AI London. We've got Missional AI London happening tomorrow at Place for Us Hall as we record. And we thought it would be a good opportunity to check back in with one of our friends and part of the organising team here at Missional AI, Mr. Gareth Russell from Jersey Road, who joins me today for this episode. Nice to be with you, my friend.
Nice to be with you too. Thank you for having me.
No, very welcome, and thanks for being here. We've got a lot to cover because AI, since we last spoke on the show just over a year ago, has been moving at a crazy clip. And so we thought it would be good to get you back on, particularly around some big topics related to comms, marketing, the world of reputation management, and crisis, which is also a topic that we'll cover today. So, but before we get into it, just for those that don't know who Jersey Road are, why don't you just give us a little bit of background on who you are, where have you come from? Other than from north of the border. Yeah,
fair enough. Yeah, so I'm from Glasgow. I was born at a very young age. We set up Jersey Road 16 years ago. What we wanted to do was to reframe public perceptions of Christianity. We felt like in the UK at that point, we felt like perceptions of Christianity were very negative and narrow, and we wanted to reframe that. So it started off with the media. We then, obviously, social media became massive, and now it's kind of multi-channel, AI included. So that was initially a UK vision. We then set up an agency in Australia 8 years ago with a similar vision. And over the last 6 years, we've been increasingly working with US organizations and working internationally as well. So with YouVersion, with Gather, and with Come and See, which is part of The Chosen, we are helping them with their global comms and have partners in Mexico and Brazil and places like that. So we are an integrated comms agency. There's about 22 in the team, and we only work with Christian organizations, helping them raise their profile.
Yeah, fantastic. And we're glad that you're doing it because there's a lot of help, I think, that's needed to navigate this space. It is moving so fast. I often say, full disclosure to the watching who maybe haven't tracked with us for that long. I've come from that background as well, where I'm working around the kind of PR world. And I know how tough it was when lots of these organizations 12, 15 years ago went through the social media revolution and tried to adapt to that and everything that's changed with search engine optimization being a big thing in PR and crisis. And here we are with AI, and there's this new emergent field which I want to talk to you about, which is being called many different things, AIEO or AIEO. It sounds a little bit like a nursery rhyme.
Old McDonald's.
He's involved too. Or GEO. So generally speaking, this is AI engine optimization or generative engine optimization. Essentially the art and science of trying to get ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, and Gemini, mostly at least, to pay attention to what you're up to in the world. Is this something that's already on the radar of missional organizations today?
I think it's getting there. I think there is a definite sense that faith-based organizations are not as behind the curve with AI as they were with social media.
Yeah, I think that's really true.
Yeah. So I think there are, I always am a bit nervous about speaking in generalizations because I think when you say Christian organizations do X, Y, or Z, it's very different depending on who the organization is, where they are who they've employed, what their teams look like, how experienced they are in this area. But I think it is a big shift, and I think there are a lot of organizations who feel that they're probably just getting into the SEO space and just mastering that, and we've finally got kind of our social media working. But GEO, and as you say, whatever you call it, is going to happen a lot quicker to us, but it is a completely different approach. It's a completely different discipline to what SEO was. So I think whether or not you are there now as a faith-based ministry, you need to be there quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I was saying to this earlier today, I run this AI transformation firm called 3 Point, and we've been finding now for the first time, past week or two, had 2 or 3 clients say to me, "Oh, we found you through ChatGPT," which is not unexpected, given the amount of people that are using ChatGPT for search and using it like a search engine. And I think most people do use these tools a bit like they used Google previously. But it still catches me out a little bit when people say, "Oh, I found you because Codex or because Claude recommended you." So can you just break us down maybe about what are some of the tactics and the things that you're having to pay more attention to? Is this different from SEO? Or where is the overlap?
Yeah. So the biggest shift here is that there's different statistics. So I've seen everything from 68% to 82%. Whatever the stat is, it's the majority of content that is through the LLMs is being sourced from third-party or earned media. So it's what other people are saying about you.
Yeah.
So,
and just when you say earned media, just give us, for those uneducated, what do you mean by earned in that sense?
So it means you're not paying for it, and it means you've not created it yourself.
Right.
So it's not on your blog, it's not on your website, it's not on your social channel, it's on someone else's social channel, or it's on someone else's blog, or it's the media that are running a story on you.
And is that only the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, the Observer, or is it other forms of media? Yeah,
so it does rank the kind of authority of the piece. So I think the more high profile the piece, the more likely they're going to the LLMs are going to source from that. But it is across the board, so they are sourcing across the board. And it does matter now what your PR strategy is. Interestingly, we actually dropped the PR from our name about probably 5 or 6 years ago. And we did that for 2 reasons. One is that we really wanted to focus on integrated comms, so PR being part of that, but not being the only thing. And 2, people's perceptions of PR are that it's to get rid of something or to spin something. Right. And that's not what we wanted to be, particularly.
Or just to kind of get column inches in publications that frankly don't have many columns in them or physically aren't being printed.
Exactly. So I think this is not about that. This is not about kind of just getting things for the sake of it. You still do need to think about who is our audience, and does that media channel or does that blog or wherever it is you're pitching the story, does that still make sense for the audience that I'm trying to reach? And is the message that I'm trying to communicate still the same? So it's not about let's just get content into whatever spaces for the sake of LLMs. It's still, is this a strategic approach? Because we often say to our clients, we can get you in the New York Times, we can probably get you a piece in the New York Times, we can probably in the UK get you a piece in the Guardian or the Times. But if it's just that piece, then to be honest, it's vanity, not strategy.
Yes.
And so you still need a strategic approach to an LLM, because you do want the LLM to then be positioning you and your message in the way that you want to be positioned. But it does mean that earned media is more important than it used to be.
And talk to me about, is this actually a volume game? Is it a recency problem, or is it an authority thing?
At this point in time, I think the models are going to probably evolve. But I would say at this point in time, it is authority. That does seem to be where the kind of value lies. Because
in the SEO world, there was kind of a bit of a combination of these things, right? I remember people just caring about how many backlinks you could create to your website and just being on every possible forum and Reddit and Twitter and everywhere else. But you're saying it doesn't necessily look like that's exactly the same?
Not at this point in time. So I think the authority definitely is important. I think if you can get multiple pieces in different authoritative sources, then that obviously is, so the more you can get in those, the better. But it is actually an opportunity for smaller charities as well as big charities or big non-profits, because it doesn't mean you need to do a lot more work. It just means you need to focus that work in a slightly different way and be more deliberate about it. And it can be that you can get some quite good wins from quite small pieces of work. So it doesn't have, this is not about how do you put millions and millions into your comms budget. It's just about refocusing the activity.
That attention that comes from the models can obviously be a very positive and powerful thing if you can be the recommended source of information on whatever your topic, right? Or even down to be the recommended church, for example, in your local area. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, though, it seems to me, because if the models pick up on something that you don't want them to be paying attention to, that is also going to live there for a long time as well. You guys do a lot of work helping ministries of different kinds work through crisis situations when they occur, and we can't shy away from the fact that that happens from time to time. And whether or not the morality of whatever the situation is aside, it still needs to be dealt with. Just give us a bit of an insight into how the AI reputation management piece is playing out at the moment for churches, for missional organizations, for educational institutions.
Yeah. So let me first just speak a little bit to our approach to this, because we actually relabeled reputation management a few years back. Again, we've been changing the PR thing. We've been relabeling this. What we've been trying to actually think about in the comm space, how does a values-led approach look? How does that really look? If we want to reflect Christ, if we want to be aligned with our values, how do we do that in a way that is meaningful? And a lot of the terminology and the approaches that have been used in PR and comms over the years have been quite transactional and lacking value. And so we relabeled reputation management as reputation governance a few years back, because we felt like reputation is something that should be stewarded. Christian organizations shouldn't be about protecting their brand. They should be about building trust. Yeah. And that means that you need a completely different posture. So you need to be planning for a crisis, not just responding to one when it happens. You need to be training your team in it. You need to be really clear on what is our position on the different kind of issues that you might be facing, including AI. And also, if a crisis does hit, what we find is, or what we would say is, that it's not the crisis itself that is damaging, it's how you handle the crisis. Yeah. And so even if AI LLMs are picking up on a crisis your organization has been through, if you have handled that crisis well, then that's a good thing. Yes. Because you will be seen to be responsible, you'll be seen to be values aligned, and you'll be seen to be humble, potentially, in that process. And we have had clients who have had crises, they've responded to them well, and they've actually said that their brand equity has increased as a result of the crisis. Now, obviously, they wouldn't have chosen to have a crisis in order to build brand equity. And also, you're not responding well because of a brand equity build. That's not the main reason. You're responding well because it's the right thing to do. But you shouldn't be scared about there being a public crisis if you're handling it well. It's only if you're handling it badly. Yeah. And where we've seen organizations handle it badly is when they're becoming defensive and when they're operating out of fear. And so what they're fearful of is fearful of losing supporters, fearful of losing face, fearful of losing their platforms, and they've become very short-term and defensive and protectionist because of that. So I think the AI space, that doesn't change in the sense that if you respond well, it's still picked up. But what I would say is there's a completely new type of risk that we need to be prepared for, and obviously there's actually multiple risks within AI, and so that can be, how does someone might be presenting as me and it's not me. Yeah. It might be that images, we might, if we're a children's charity, we might have images of a child on our website, and they could be misused in a way that is detrimental to, first and foremost, the child and the family, but also to you as an organization. Yeah. So these are things that any ministry has to be prepared for now. You can't just wait until the thing kicks off. You definitely don't want to wait until the thing kicks off. No, for sure. Because that's when, if a journalist is coming to you and saying, I'll give you 12 hours to respond, or actually usually 3 hours or 2 hours to respond, you don't want to then be gathering your board, gathering your executive team, gathering everyone to say, what's our position on this? You want to have had those nuanced conversations in advance. So you mentioned a few different kind of risks there, which I think are complicated because they somehow run counter to the aims often of a communications function within a ministry to try and get themselves out there. So whether you're trying to raise funds or raise awareness, or if you're a teaching ministry, share media and share the message, whether that's for evangelism or gospel advancement or just growing a congregation. A lot of the tactics that people are using to do those things are more video, more audio, publishing more content to your perspective. And then those very things could be being used against you. I mean, you're seeing now, we saw the very famous example
when the image models first launching of the Pope wearing the puffer jacket, previous Pope, and that could be maybe
good for puffer jacket sales.
Very good for puffer jacket sales. Turns out not so good for popes. But that process has kind of been and gone, and now the models are getting so good that it can be very easy for someone to take. I mean, I think HeyGen say that they need 15 seconds of video clip to turn a AI avatar around of someone. What kind of risk does that pose to the public figure in the current state? Are you worried that some of these people are just going to want to shy away from public engagement as a result?
Well, good communications has always been only good in the context that it's operating. So 100 years ago, you had to know about your local area, the people in your locality.
Yeah.
How would you best engage with them, and how do we? I remember I went to Ephesus years ago. And in Ephesus, which is obviously this ancient, historical, biblical place, the first ever advertisement is there. And it's a kind of etched piece of stone for a doctor's surgery, basically. And, that doctor knew his audience.
Yeah, sure.
So he etched it. And when social media and iPhones and smartphones and high-speed internet, when all of this came in, the whole playing field changed, and there was a lot of fear then, of where are the risks here, and there were a lot of new risks, but it didn't mean that we had to just shut down. What it meant was we had to adapt, and I think we do have to become more agile, but there are far greater opportunities now for us to reach people that we've never been able to reach. AI accelerates that massively, but there are risks, and so I think there will be some people who are fearful of what they don't know, but what I would really encourage people is to learn and to see where are people, because that's where the people you're trying to communicate to are. And if you're not where they are, then I was just thinking about William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army. He used the brass band as a tool to engage with the community. But what he did was he took tunes or songs that were already in the public sphere and changed the words to them to engage with the people. So he met people where they were at.
So he like deep-faked the songs.
exactly. The kind of original deepfake. Yeah. So, but he was taking what they already knew and engaging with them there rather than saying, come over to where I am and use my language and my culture. So I think that's what we need to be doing here. Yeah. We do need to be cautious. We do need to use wisdom and discernment. And we do need to prepare ourselves for the potential risks, because I think if we're not prepared for those risks, then they could get out of hand very quickly.
Yeah. Obviously, the challenge of deepfakes right now, particularly when it comes to AI-generated video, is that it looks like something very convincing. To respond to that, I feel like you have to be ready to go live at any moment with video of your own and do something that's equally convincing to kind of like undo the work that the deepfake has. Are you seeing ministries be able to actually respond in that way? Like how, the tools are there. The iPhone is a great weapon, in this kind of defense arsenal. But like, how readily set up are most ministries to respond with genuine user-generated content video as a response mechanism? Yeah,
well, I think we're still very much in the early stages of that. I'm not seeing there being that agility yet, and there's still a fear of, even if something is said about us that is wrong in the public sphere, and we push back on that, and we say, this is the truth, then what might happen? And will we get are we bringing ourselves into the conversation unnecessarily? But our view is you need to be quick, you need to be truthful, you need to be clear, and you need to be set up for that. And so you need to have internal buy-in to that. And that's what's taking a lot, because I think there's a generational difference here where often the leadership of the organization is older. Those who are maybe either in the executive team or more junior are younger and a different generation. They're ready to move, but they're sometimes blocked by those who are older and a bit more fearful of what it might mean.
I mean, let's talk about that generational change that's happening. There are many ministries in the US in particular, and increasingly across Europe, where let's say the elder statesmen and stateswomen of the faith are reaching a point where they are stepping down, they're moving into retirement. Some of them are kind of going to at some point or other have to hand over their ministries to the next generation. And there seems to be a huge opportunity with AI to extend the lifespan of that content, of that teaching. But with it comes the challenge of managing the legacy, the reputation, and the image, in fact, of those people. Have you run into this yet with anyone?
Well, I mean, I agree with you that it's a massive opportunity. You look at, in London, ABBA Voyage is, they're not dead, they're still alive.
Yeah, for those watching in the US, if you're not familiar, both with ABBA, that was the band, as the Swedish folks, and secondly, Voyage is this purpose-built theatre in East London with holographic versions of Benny and Bjorn and the crowd that you can go and watch every night. It plays every day,
and it's sold out
multiple times, sold out, to go and watch holographic versions of ABBA that are not real people. Yeah. So it can be commercially worthwhile. Yeah,
exactly. And I think, I'm not saying, let's follow the ABBA model, but what it does mean is there is great content, particularly from preachers and people who are teachers and thought leaders. There's great content that shouldn't fall away when someone passes away. And Tim Keller's a great example of this just now, because the Tim Keller podcast, I think, is probably doing as well as it ever has.
I know,
and it is always in my Spotify rankings. And the content is so rich. There's so much of it, and we can still do so much of it. And AI is going to allow us to actually see Tim Keller delivering it, I suspect, at some point, and and all this sort of stuff. And there'll be ethical concerns about some of that, and there'll be some frameworks and boundaries that we probably need to put in place. But as you say, there's also risk, and I tell you what, there's not a risk of, is that person then doing something they shouldn't, that will then kind of make the content cancel the content because they're not around anymore. So I mean, that's
true. Although I suppose the risk is that because of the amount of that content out there, and if we start synthetically generating versions of those people officially, the risk is that others may do the same thing and put words in their mouth that they never said.
Yeah, that I think is where we need clarity. So I think there's probably some ethical frameworks, as you're involved in putting a lot of this together as well, and the work you're doing, that needs to be, this is authentically Tim Keller, or this is authentically whoever it might be. I'll stop using Tim Keller as an example now, but I think that again, that's been around for a long time. Rolexes, there's real Rolexes, there's fake Rolexes, and people know the difference, or people who know what they're talking about know the difference. So I think that it will just continue. But I think AI does give us opportunities to speak. We were working with a client who had a global campaign that they were going to be operating in I think it was 96 countries or something like that. They were able to take the content, live translate it in a way that engaged every audience live instantly with that content that wouldn't have been able to be done otherwise. And, from a legacy perspective, you'll be able to do that as well. So I think that, in terms of global reach, I think there's huge opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen several startups from the Missional AI community, working on translation in particular, to be able to, live translate or, post, cut and edit and translate video content, podcast content, sermon content. And obviously many of the big podcasters now, most famous example probably being Diary CEO. I think they're now in 20 or so different languages on YouTube that you can kind of get Stephen Bartlett live talking to you in a variety of different tongues, and people saying that they're engaging with it in a different way. I suppose the risk there is is there a kind of aspect of genuine, kind of content there? Is there, authenticity problem perhaps for particularly people in markets where they've not necessarily come across that speaker or preacher before? They see them speaking their language, then they come and see them in person, find out they couldn't speak Portuguese or Swahili or Hindi or whatever it might be. Do you think that's a reputational risk?
I think if there's a lack of transparency, then yes. But I think it's just about communication, just being clear about labeling it in a way that is really clear. I think Christian organizations should be the most transparent organizations on the planet. I think we should be really not trying to position ourselves or posture ourselves in a way that is lacking integrity. I think we should be leading the way in this, and if we're not, there's a problem. And I heard about there's one a company who wanted to be the most transparent company on the planet, and they were actually a bamboo bicycle company. They made bicycles out of bamboo, which is well named.
Yeah.
And they broadcast their senior leadership team meetings on their website.
Wow.
And live. And so, and I don't know about you, but I've been part of senior leadership team meetings that I'm very glad we're not broadcast live. But I love the kind of posture of that. And I think if Christian organizations can at least take the sentiment of that and figure out how does this work best in our environment, and how does it work best with our audiences, and how does it work best with the people we're trying to serve, then we can create that content, because people are benefiting from YouTube content just now where they've never met the person in person, but they're really benefiting. They feel like they know them because they're really being authentic, and they're really being kind of sharing their lives with them, and maybe they're even interacting with them online, and so it's already there again. It's just this will be a far more personalized way of it happening, and so I think again there's a real opportunity for organizations to press into that.
I received a invite this weekend to a friend of ours kid's birthday party that was completely very obviously an AI generated poster, but it was far and away better than the Canva thing that they would have done 6 months ago, and the bad word art version of it probably of 20 years ago. These tools are democratizing access to things that maybe are not excellent but look way better than the average. And I just think about the comms organizations and teams within a lot of these missional organizations. Do you see that as an opportunity, as a threat? Is it a weapon that's being used well, or is it creating a lot of sloppiness of content? Because social media is both a quality and a volume game these days to kind of cut through. So just for those that are watching, working with their comms teams, maybe you are a comms team leader in the community, what kind of advice are you giving to them about how to use these things to actually have a real impact, as opposed to just create a bunch of sloppy comms?
Well, I think the first thing is really learn what is the best platform for what you're trying to do, because AI platforms are all different, and ChatGPT, Claude, all these, they do different things. So we found that Claude is great for writing. It really writes well. I think ChatGPT is better for images. You're the expert here, but so I think learn what the platforms do, and then learn how to get the best out of them. Yeah. So I think there is a lot of sloppiness out there because people are literally just putting in create an image for this, and there's not much more thought than that going into it. And I am finding myself when I'm scrolling through LinkedIn, for example, and I see a really obviously AI generated thing, I am scrolling past it. Yeah. So I'm not.
You can just spot it as you go past. Yeah.
I think, and this would maybe be an interesting thing to hear your thoughts on. One thing I've been really thinking about is if people are generating their thought leadership or their content mostly through AI is going to take the best practice and put it into the same format, and therefore everything is going to look the same.
Yeah, there's definitely a structure of paragraph, 3 bullet points, paragraph, 3 bullet points,
And obviously the M-dash and all that. But so in which case, to be distinct, you're going to have to write something outside of what AI would produce. Now, I suppose the question is, will AI then be able to...
I mean, I've seen people go full circle of like starting to do bad punctuation and sloppy use of capital letters on their LinkedIn post just to make sure that people think it wasn't written by AI.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably train a good Claude skill to write that way, and then you kind of solve the problem for yourself. But
I think it is an issue now that we're having, because I did a post about the fact that we need to not outsource thought leadership, because we need to still think about stuff and think about what we think about it and really wrestle with some of the kind of ethical issues that we're dealing with, and all that sort of stuff. What is our thought leadership? I think AI can be a great partner in developing your thought in developing how you write about that and how you present it. But I think if it's only doing that, then we're outsourcing not only our thought, but then it's just becoming a mass of content that looks the same, and you're not then distinct. So I think we do need to still find ways to engage meaningfully with our audiences, and that means we do have to be distinct. I don't agree that we need to be unique. I think very few things are unique.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes a lot of organizations place a lot of importance on uniqueness, but actually just be good at what you do and deliver it well. And I think that is a challenge. How do we remain distinct from a comms perspective in what we say.
Yeah, I mean, you see the kind of the retro photo camera renaissance that's kind of going on at the moment.
Yeah.
People carrying around, PowerShot and CyberShot cameras from 20 years ago. I wonder if the same thing needs to kind of happen in the thought leadership space. Like LinkedIn maybe is going to go through its kind of like grunge era. Like everything's just going to get like a bit more sloppy and a bit more like, aggy and just generally like less polished, because actually people are just done with the kind of like super well structured 4-paragraph post with all of the hashtags in the right places and an emoji every 3 bullet points. It's just not good.
I think not taking yourself too seriously, because it's quite a serious thing, the AI outputs. There's not a lot of personality, but I again, when I've posted and there was one post I did where I kind of spoke to the fourth wall and said, this is a personal post. I'm now thinking about doing a LinkedIn pivot here. Is everybody with me on this?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. And then I kind of said, right, this is what I think the learning is.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I cringe sometimes when I read these things. And there was that famous story of the guy who got engaged and then said what the 5 leadership lessons of getting engaged were. And that is too far.
John Maxwell, if you're listening, to be written in that for sure. Yeah.
But I do think that there is something about speaking, just to not just with authenticity, but actually with credibility.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of things that brand is changing now, that authenticity is actually maybe overdone.
That's
we
right.
need credibility now.
Yeah, I mean, I think an example that's doing super well with this, look at Dave Ramsey and his organization. They put out multiple hours of super polished, amazing radio programming that gets cut every day in a studio that looks a bit like this. But then when I follow along with Rachel Cruz on her Instagram, and it's just her in her car talking, giving money tips, from the driver's seat, and that stuff performs just as well.
Exactly.
It's this balance between, you can do both. You can do the lovely, we're in a great studio. Thank you to our friends at Premier here for their wonderful facilities for, something crafted like this. And the only video that I've had go viral this year was one of me and my wife getting on a plane to our holiday destination, where I was complaining about being in economy class with my kids, and that went viral. And so
in a good way,
in a funny way, intentionally so. But all of the effort that I could go into of like this perfectly edited, well shot video goes nowhere.
Yeah.
And actually just playing on the meme, or leaning into the cultural moment, or just sharing something genuine and human, that cuts through. And actually, funny enough, the least amount of AI involved in those videos.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's funny because obviously the AI that's in the algorithms is paying attention to that stuff, and that's what we have to.
And that's why people are finding you now, right?
That's right.
Through these because your content is out there, it is in the right places, and now people are finding you through it.
Yeah, and being genuine at the right time. Well, Gareth, thank you so much for your insights and learning. So, if people want to find out more about Jersey Road, where do they go to get in contact with you guys?
AI. Or actually,
ask ChatGPT.
So jerseyroad.agency is our website, but we've got LinkedIn is really the platform which we kind of use the most. So we'd love to see you on there.
We'll go and like and subscribe to all of Gareth's posts, whether they're genuinely written by him or AI. And thanks for taking the time to be with us on this episode of the Missional AI podcast.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks so much for joining us on this episode of the Missional AI podcast. If you are not yet subscribed, we would love it if you would do so. You can find the link to do that probably below this video if you're watching it, or if you're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts, please subscribe. And if you're not yet joined up for our newsletter, or to join one of our upcoming conferences and gatherings, we would love to make sure that you are able to join us. Go to missional.ai. That's missional.ai in your browser. Go and join up, sign up for the newsletter, and we will see you hopefully very soon, either here on another episode or in person at one of our global gatherings. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm James Poulter, your host of the Missional AI podcast.